The wind over the Pelennor tastes of ash and iron as the white city burns. Men run like shadows in a furnace, screaming names that vanish in the roar of flaming stone. Above them, on the broken walls of Minas Tirith, a tall figure stands alone, ringfire coiled like a living brand around his finger, his eyes alight with a terrible golden radiance as a great eye trembles and shrinks in distant Barad-dûr. If this vision of a darker, stranger War of the Ring draws you in, tap the like button and join the fellowship by subscribing. Tell me in the comments which realm you would stand for in this timeline and where in Middle-earth you are watching from tonight. Long before the walls of Minas Tirith crack and the sky turns red, the story bends in a quiet harbor where gulls cry and the smell of salt lies thick upon the air. It begins in the gray havens. Mist drifts low over the water, catching the first thin light of dawn. Ships lie at anchor, their white sails furled, their hulls whispering against the piers. The sea sighs endlessly beyond the breakwater, as if in remembrance of older ages and older griefs. On the high quay, where the stone is worn smooth by the tread of uncounted feet, two figures stand together, cloaked against the chill. One is tall even for his kind, with hair like silvered starlight and a beard that falls upon his breast. His eyes are deep and far-seeing, as if they have watched the sun rise too many times to count. This is Círdan the shipwright, last of the Teleri of Beleriand, keeper of the havens, since the world was young. The other wears a weather-stained cloak of the north, travel-worn and plain, yet his bearing is straight as a spear. A few strands of gray touch his dark hair. His face is lean, and in his gray eyes there is a quiet weariness, the weight of long roads and long secrets. This is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, called Strider in the wild, yet heir to Isildur and the lost kings of Gondor. They stand in silence at first, listening to the water. Círdan speaks at last, his voice low, like a tide turned to words. You have come, as he said you would. Aragorn does not ask whom he means. The memory of a tall, bent figure in gray robes, leaning on a staff, flickers in his mind. He sees again the twinkle in old eyes, the pipe smoke curling in a Bree inn, the weariness in Gandalf's face when he spoke of shadows lengthening in the east. He spoke with you then, Aragorn answers, of the enemy, of the ring. Círdan looks eastward, though there is nothing to see but the pale sky over the hills. He spoke of many things, yet not all that he foresaw will come to pass, unless the powers decree it. Even the wise do not see all ends, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. He turns, and for a moment the sea's light catches on something in his hand, a small glimmer, like a coal banked in the hollow of his palm. Aragorn feels it before he fully sees it, a warmth, subtle yet insistent, like the first breath of spring on a winter day, a hum in the air, not of sound but of presence, as if some hidden chord has been plucked in the deep places of the world. What is that? He whispers. Círdan studies him, as if weighing him upon some scale that only he can see. When first the gray pilgrim came to these shores, the elf says, he was as one weary with a long journey, though he had only just arrived. Yet in him I perceived a fire, a patience, and a pity that would endure much. To him I gave this, for I deemed that he would have the most need of it. He opens his hand. In his palm lies a ring of gold, set with a single stone like living flame. It burns without being consumed, its crimson heart swirling as if a tiny firestorm were trapped within. The air around it shivers. Narya, Círdan says, the ring of fire. Aragorn feels the world tilt. Old tales rise in him, whispers of the three forged by Celebrimbor, hidden from Sauron's hand of Narya, the white, in the keeping of Galadriel of Vilya, the blue, born by Elrond half-elven in Imladris, and Narya, the red, given in secret to Mithrandir, the grey pilgrim. Gandalf bears that ring, he says, or so it was told in riddles and half-sayings, never confirmed. He did, Círdan replies. For near 1,000 years he bore it, and in his hands its fire did not consume, but kindled. Hearts were strengthened, despair was driven back, and in many hidden places hope was lit like a lamp. The shipwright looks again upon the ring, and his ancient face is grave. Yet the time has changed. The storm that gathers now is not the storm that we foresaw. The enemy moves swifter and in other guises. Gandalf's path will be darker than he knows. There is another who must bear this burden if the West is to stand. Aragorn's throat tightens. You mean to give it to me? Círdan nods once. The line of Elendil has endured long in shadow. You have walked in secret, fought nameless wars, and turned no eye to the glory that is your due. You have faced the lure of power in many forms, and you have refused it. That is why you must take this ring, Aragorn. He steps closer. The air grows warmer, the mist steaming faintly around them. Gandalf's task is to counsel, to stir, to guide. Yet another task lies before you. You must be a fire that men can see. You must be a blaze on the mountain, a beacon on the walls of stone. This ring will not make you a tyrant unless you choose it. It will only make more of what you are. His eyes search Aragorn's face. What are you? Aragorn thinks of many things in that heartbeat, of the Dunedain who have followed him through rain and darkness, trusting him without crown or throne, of Arwen's eyes in the twilight, of Rivendell, and the choice that lies between them. Of Isildur standing in the fire of Orodruin, the ring of the enemy in his hand. He remembers also the voice of Elrond, stern and sorrowful. The same blood flows in your veins, the same weakness. Aragorn looks at Narya, and he feels it like a distant echo of that other ring, a promise, a whisper of what could be done if only enough will and fire were brought to bear. Kingdoms reforged, darkness burned away, the world remade. He closes his eyes. I am a man, he says at last, no more and no less. Círdan's gaze softens, as if that answer pleases him. Then take this, man of the West, he says, and let its fire be as your own. Use it to hearten the weary, to withstand the shadow. But remember this, all fire burns. Even that which warms and protects leaves ashes behind. He holds out Narya. For a moment, Aragorn hesitates. Somewhere in the east, unseen, a vast eye flickers as if feeling some faint disturbance in the air. In Mithlond's harbor, the sea sighs and the gulls cry harshly. Aragorn reaches out. His fingers close around the ring. The world narrows to a point of red light. Heat rushes up his arm, not searing but fierce, as if a living flame has leaped from the ring into his blood. He gasps, staggering back, his vision flaring white and gold. Images crash through him, cities burning, banners streaming on high walls, men kneeling with tears of joy, a crown of silver and gems like stars, a great shadow shriveling and screaming in the light of a fire that is not of this world. Then it is over. He stands on the quay, breath ragged in the cold morning, the ring heavy and hot against his skin. Círdan watches him, unreadable. Do you feel its weight? The elf asks softly. Yes, Aragorn answers. And its hunger. Círdan inclines his head. Good. Only a fool feels no fear of fire. He closes Aragorn's hand over the ring. Hide it as you may. Speak of it to no one, save those whom you must utterly trust. Not even to Gandalf, unless the need is dire. He will walk his path, and you will walk yours. Perhaps they will meet, perhaps not. The music is not yet fully woven. Aragorn tucks Narya into an inner pocket of his tunic. Feeling its warmth against his heart, the road east is long, he says, and dark. The sea will remain, Círdan replies, whether you return or no. Go now, Aragorn. The world waits for its king, though it knows it not. Aragorn turns from the sea and begins the long journey back into a land that does not yet know the shape of the fire that has been kindled within it. Far away, in the deep places of the earth beneath Barad-dûr, Sauron stirs. He does not yet know what has been done in Mithlond, for the three are veiled from his sight. Yet in some dim way, he senses a shift, a faint stirring in the tapestry of power, a warmth, where there should be only the cold of fear. He dismisses it. His eye turns instead toward the Shire, where a small plain ring lies in a hobbit's pocket, unremarked and unfeared. That is the fire that concerns him. For now, the months that follow are filled with uneasy quiet in the west. In the angle of Eriador, where the rivers Horwell and Loudwater meet, the Dunedain gather in a hidden camp beneath the pines. Smoke rises in thin threads from their fires. Children run between the tents, laughing, wooden swords in their hands. The air smells of damp earth and pine resin. Aragorn returns among them, as if from a long patrol. Only Halbarad, his kinsman, notes the change in his eyes, the new intensity that flares there when he speaks of the days to come. "You have seen something," Halbarad says one night as they sit beside a low fire. Sparks drift up into the dark, vanishing among the stars. "I have seen many things," Aragorn answers. His hand, hidden in his cloak, curls around Narya. The ring's warmth pulses faintly like a heartbeat. Halbarad studies him. "You burn, cousin," he says quietly, more than before. It is as if some hidden flame has been fanned. Aragorn says nothing. In Rivendell, Elrond stands upon a balcony, the wind stirring his dark hair. He feels a subtle change in the air, a faint warmth that comes and goes like the memory of summer. Vilya on his finger remains cool, its sapphire deep and steady. He frowns. "Strange," he murmurs. "The world grows more perilous. Yet there is a new fire abroad, and it is not the fire of the enemy." He thinks of Círdan, of Mithlond, of the gray pilgrim who has not yet returned from his wanderings in the Shire. A disquiet stirs in him, but he cannot name its cause. In Lorien, Galadriel walks beneath the golden boughs of Melorn trees, her white dress whispering over the soft earth. Nenya shines like ice upon her hand. She pauses, looking westward. For an instant, she feels a warmth, a flicker at the edge of her perception, as if a distant hearth has been kindled on a winter night. Her eyes narrow. "So," she says softly, "the shipwright has moved his peace." Celeborn glances at her. "What do you perceive, my lady?" he asks. "A new fire among men," she answers. "Whether it will warm or consume, I cannot yet tell." In the Shire, Frodo Baggins sits by his window in Bag End, watching the rain fall. The ring lies in an envelope on the mantelpiece, forgotten for the moment. Gandalf smokes his pipe, lines of worry etched deep around his eyes. He has not come to the Grey Havens in many years. He does not know that his hand is bare of Narya, that the subtle fire that once moved with him now burns in another, yet even he feels that something has shifted. "The board is set," he mutters, "but some of the pieces do not stand where I expected." Frodo looks at him puzzled. "What do you mean, Gandalf?" Nothing that need trouble you for now, the wizard replies. Tell me again about this golem. I must be very sure. Time moves. Gandalf discovers the truth of the One Ring in Minas Tirith and rides hard for the Shire. Saruman falls deeper into treachery in Isengard. The Nazgul stir. Sauron's eye turns more and more toward the west. In the north, Aragorn moves like a shadow, yet wherever he goes, hearts kindle. He visits Bree, and the folk there whisper that the ranger strider seems more kingly of late, his presence filling the common room like the glow of a great hearth. When he speaks of the darkening east, men find themselves listening longer than they intend, their own courage rising with his words. He passes through the lands of the Bornings, and their chieftains, rough and proud, feel an odd warmth in his company. Old grudges seem less pressing. Hope, which has been a stranger for long years, stands at the door and peers in. He goes even into the lands of the Rohirrim in secret, riding the grass seas as he did in his youth. He speaks with Eothan and Elfhelm, with riders whose names will never be written in great tales, and in their hearts a fire is lit. When they look to the east, they feel fear, yes, but also something fiercer, the desire to stand and not to flee. Narya does its work without trumpets or banners. It does not grant Aragorn new strength of arm, nor does it make him invulnerable. It simply magnifies what is already there, his endurance, his quiet authority, his power to kindle resolve in others, yet it also magnifies his doubts, his burdens, alone at night. When the campfires burn low and his men sleep, Aragorn feels the ring burning against his skin. It whispers of what could be done if he would only grasp more firmly, command more boldly, impose his will upon the wavering. He remembers Círdan's warning, all fire burns, on a night of thin clouds and a waning moon. Aragorn stands upon a low hill in the wild, looking east. Halbarad approaches, the grass whispering under his boots. You do not sleep, Halbarad says. Nor do you, Aragorn answers. They stand together in silence for a time. You feel it, do you not? Halbarad asks at last. The weight of what is coming, of what you must be. Aragorn's hand strays to his chest, where Narya lies warm. I feel many things, he says. Fear, hope, a fire that is not wholly my own. Halbarad glances at him sharply. A fire not your own? Aragorn hesitates. He has told no one of the ring, yet Halbarad has stood with him in too many battles not to sense that something has changed. There are gifts that burn the hands that hold them, Aragorn says slowly, yet to refuse them may doom many. If I step fully into what I must be, I may be consumed. If I do not, others will fall in darkness. How does a man choose between such fires? Halbarad's voice is rough. He chooses to burn for others, not to make others burn for him. Aragorn looks at his kinsman. That is your counsel, that is my love, Halbarad replies, and my oath. Wherever you burn, I will stand beside you until I am ash. Far away in the Shire, the Black Riders cross the borders. The ring begins its slow journey to Rivendell. When Aragorn meets Frodo Baggins at the Prancing Pony in Bree, there is a new intensity in his gaze. The hobbits feel it as a heat in the air around him, though they cannot name its source. When he steps from the shadows and reveals himself, his words carry a weight that is more than merely the authority of a ranger. I could have killed you and taken the ring long ago, he says, voice low and steady, but I have not. I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and if by life or death I can save you, I will. Frodo believes him. Narya stirs against Aragorn's heart, as if in approval on Weathertop. When the Nazgul come, the fire burns brighter. The night is cold, the wind sharp. The ruins of the watchtower stand black against a sky smeared with cloud. Frodo and his friends huddle near the small fire that Aragorn has kindled, their faces pale. Aragorn sits apart, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. He feels Narya's warmth pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The ring seems to sense the approach of the Nine. Its fire flares, eager, hungry, as if it would leap from his chest and meet the cold of the wraiths with its own fierce heat. He smells them before he sees them, a scent like old graves and damp stone. Then they are there, black shapes gliding up the hill, their cloaks barely stirring. The hobbits tremble. Aragorn stands. In that moment, the fire in him surges. For an instant, he sees himself striding forward, Narya blazing openly on his finger, a ring of fire roaring up around him. He sees the Nazgul shrinking back, their shadowy forms shriveling in the heat. He could drive them away in a storm of flame, perhaps even wound them more deeply than any mortal blade could. But he also sees the other side of that vision, the ring-bearer staring at him in terror, not only of the Nazgul, but of him. The eye in Barad-dûr turning suddenly and fully toward this new beacon of power. The fragile secrecy of their errand burned away in one blazing moment. He grits his teeth. He keeps Narya hidden. Instead, he snatches up 2 brands from the fire, one in each hand. He cries out in the Sindarin tongue, the ancient words of the Dunedain rising from him like sparks. Back, you servants of Morgul! By Elendil's air and by the flame of the west, I forbid you! He leaps forward, the firebrands whirling. The Nazgul recoil at the sight of the flames, hissing. Their swords gleam pale in the dark. One of them, taller than the rest, raises its blade and points at Frodo. The ring-bearer, drawn by a force he cannot resist, slips the ring upon his finger. The world twists. Aragorn sees Frodo vanish. He hears the Morgul knife strike. He smells the sickly, sweet scent of that cursed blade. Rage flares in him, hot and bright. Narya responds. For a heartbeat, the fire in his hands leaps higher, unnatural and fierce. The brands burn white at the tips. The Nazgul cry out, their forms wavering. Even the Witch King flinches. His shadowy shape seeming to thin, Aragorn feels the ring on his breast blaze like a coal. Power surges through him, not his own, not fully. He could push it further. He could throw back the Nine entirely, break them upon this hill. He stops. He forces the fire down, lets it gutter back to a mortal blaze. The Nazgul, shaken but not destroyed, draw back into the night, their task accomplished enough. Frodo lies gasping, pale as death. Aragorn kneels beside him, his hands trembling. "Frodo," he whispers. "Frodo, do not go where I cannot follow." He presses his hand against the hobbit's shoulder, above the wound. Narya's warmth seeps faintly through his palm, as if it would lend some of its fire to this small, flickering life. "Stay," Aragorn breathes. "Stay in the light." For a moment, Frodo's eyes flutter open. He looks up at Aragorn, and in his dimming gaze there is trust, not fear. Aragorn feels a fierce, painful relief. He has walked a narrow edge and not yet fallen. In Rivendell, at the Council of Elrond, the fire burns more quietly, but no less surely. The ring of the enemy lies on a stone table, small and plain. Around it sit Elrond, Gandalf, Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, and others. The air is thick with argument, with fear, with pride. Words clash like swords. Aragorn sits in shadow near the wall. his face calm, his hand resting over Narya beneath his tunic. When Boromir speaks of using the ring against Sauron, Aragorn feels Narya stir, as if in warning. He knows too well the lure of such thoughts. The ring is altogether evil, Elrond says. Its strength, Boromir, is too great for anyone to wield at will, save only those who have already a great power of their own. But for them it holds an even deadlier peril. Gandalf's gaze flicks for an instant toward Aragorn. There is a question in that look. Aragorn wonders, not for the first time, whether the wizard suspects. Gandalf's own hand is bare. The subtle fire that once moved with him is gone, though he has not yet fully named that loss in his own mind. Yet, if he guesses where Narya now lies, he says nothing. When the council chooses the path of destruction, Aragorn feels Narya pulse once, as if in assent. Fire must meet fire. The small dark circle on the table and the hidden ring against his heart are bound in ways that none of them fully understand. The fellowship is formed. In the months that follow, as they journey through Holland, over Caradhras, and into the dark of Moria, Narya's presence is a constant, subtle warmth at Aragorn's core. When the company falters in the snow, he finds words that turn despair into grim humor, that make hobbits laugh through chattering teeth. When fear grips them in the black halls beneath the mountains, his voice is steady, his eyes bright, and they draw strength from him. Gandalf feels the absence of Narya more keenly here than anywhere. Once, in such moments, he could reach within and find a reserve of fire, a deep well of courage and endurance that he might share with others. Now he must rely only on his own will, on the respect and love he has earned over long years. He does not fail, yet he feels the effort more keenly. At the bridge of Khazad-dûm, when the Balrog comes, the difference is stark. The great hall shakes, fire and shadow loom. The company flees across the narrow bridge, stone crumbling beneath their feet. Gandalf turns, staff and sword in hand, to face the ancient terror of the deep. The Balrog roars, a sound like a furnace collapsing. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor, Gandalf cries. You cannot pass. In another timeline, Narya's hidden fire would have flared within him, lending him strength beyond his own, kindling his spirit to white heat. Here, he stands with only his own power and the authority given him from beyond the world. It is enough. Barely. When the Balrog's sword strikes his staff, the white light that bursts forth is slightly dimmer than it might have been. The bridge cracks and falls. The Balrog plunges. Gandalf is dragged down. He falls into the abyss, fire and shadow all around him. As he falls, he reaches instinctively for a fire that is no longer his. He finds only his own fierce will. It will have to suffice. On the mountain peak, when at last he casts down the Balrog and dies, his spirit is almost spent. Yet the one who sent him gathers him up and sends him back, greater than before. Gandalf the White returns to Middle-earth, but without Narya's subtle flame. His power is purer now, more direct, less veiled. Yet he lacks that particular gift of kindling hearts that once was his. That gift burns elsewhere. In Rohan, when Gandalf rides to Edoras and breaks Saruman's hold on Theoden, his words are sharp and commanding. The spell is broken, the king's eyes clear. Yet the deep sustaining warmth that might have flowed from Narya into Theoden's weary heart is absent. The king rises, but his strength is more brittle. In Fongorn, when Gandalf meets Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli after his return, there is a moment when he looks at Aragorn and sees with new clarity the fire that burns in him. They stand upon the green sward, the trees looming around them like listening giants. Sunlight filters down in shafts, catching the white of Gandalf's robes and the gray and green of Aragorn's. "You have changed, Aragorn," Gandalf says slowly. "You shine more brightly than when last we parted." Aragorn meets his gaze steadily. "The times are darker," he replies. "A dim light is of little use when the night deepens. Men need a blaze to rally to." Gandalf's eyes narrow, and for a heartbeat his gaze drops to Aragorn's hand, to the place where Narya lies hidden. A flicker of understanding passes over his face. "So," he murmurs. "Círdan has chosen." Aragorn's breath catches. "You knew?" he asks. "I suspected," Gandalf answers. "When I found my own fire banked and cold, long years ago, I guessed that the shipwright had moved the ring. I did not begrudge him, for he is wise and sees far, yet I did not know to whom he had given it." He studies Aragorn closely. "Now I see. And I see also that his choice was not without peril." Aragorn's hand tightens over the hidden ring. "I did not seek it," he says. "I would have refused it had I dared. But Círdan spoke of need and of what I must be. I have tried to use it only to hearten others, not to exalt myself." Gandalf's gaze is kind yet grave. "Fire does not ask why it burns," he says. "It simply consumes what is given it. You are wise to be wary, yet there will come a time, Aragorn, when you must decide whether to let that fire blaze forth or to keep it veiled. That choice will shape not only your fate, but the fate of many." He lays a hand briefly on Aragorn's shoulder. "Until then, remember this. You are more than any ring you bear. You are Isildur's heir and the hope of men. Do not let any other fire blind you to that truth." Aragorn nods, but in his heart the conflict only deepens. At Helm's Deep, the choice comes closer. Rain lashes the deepened wall. The air is thick with the smell of wet stone and fear. Thousands of Uruk-hai press against the fortress like a black tide, their torches guttering in the storm. Thunder rumbles overhead. Aragorn moves along the battlements, his voice rising above the roar. "Hold fast," he cries. "This night we stand, or all the west will fall. Remember the sun that will rise if we endure." Men straighten at his words. Even the exhausted, the wounded, feel a new strength stir in them. Narya's fire pulses with each shout, each gesture. Aragorn is a living beacon on the wall, his presence a flame in the darkness. Yet he holds the ring's power in check. He could do more. He knows it. He can almost see it. A ring of real fire leaping up along the wall, consuming ladders and siege engines, turning the rain itself to steam. The Uruk-hai shrieking and falling back from a storm of heat and light. But he also sees the men beside him, their faces lit not by their own courage, but by his fire alone. He sees their wills bending, their hearts becoming extensions of his. He sees the path that leads from such a night to a throne taken not by consent, but by awe and fear. He grits his teeth and keeps the fire within. When the wall is breached and the enemy pours in, he fights with sword and voice alone. He is everywhere at once, it seems, his shouts cutting through the chaos, his blade flashing like a stroke of lightning. Narya's warmth sustains him, keeps his muscles from failing, his mind from despair. Yet the victory, when it comes with dawn and the charge of Gandalf and Éomer, is won by many, not by one blazing will. Still, word spreads. Men speak of Aragorn at Helm's Deep with a kind of awe. They say that in his presence their fear melted like frost before a fire, that his eyes burned with a light that was not wholly of this world. In Minas Tirith, far to the south, Denethor hears these tales and feels a slow, smoldering resentment. "A fire in the north," he mutters, pacing before the palantir. "A kingly blaze," they say. And what am I? The steward, left to tend the coals of a dying house. He grips the stone more tightly, seeking in its depths for some sign of this upstart flame. Sauron, sensing his gaze, fills his mind with images of war and ruin. In Osgiliath, Faramir stands beneath a gray sky, watching the dark waters of the Anduin. He feels a strange warmth in his chest, a stirring of hope that he cannot account for. Strange, he says to himself. The world grows darker, yet I feel that somewhere a new light has been kindled. He does not yet know that this light will soon cross his path. Meanwhile, Frodo and Sam creep through the Emyn Muil and down into the dead marshes, guided by Gollum. Their path is much as it was in the other tale, for Narya's fire burns far from them. Yet even here, some faint echo of Aragorn's growing blaze reaches them. On a night when the marsh lights flicker and the air smells of rot, Sam feels suddenly that they are not utterly alone. "Mr. Frodo," he whispers, "do you ever feel as if there is someone far away who is on our side, burning like a great fire? Not like the eye, mind you, more like a hearth in a homely hole, only bigger." Frodo, exhausted, manages a faint smile. "If there is such a fire, Sam," he says, "then I hope it burns long enough for us to finish this." In Ithilien, the paths of fire and shadow cross. Faramir's men capture Frodo, Sam, and Gollum near the waterfall of Hineth Anun. The hidden refuge is much as it was, the sound of falling water, the smell of damp stone, the flicker of torchlight on the cave walls. Yet Faramir himself is subtly different. In this timeline, he has felt more strongly the lack of any true king in Gondor, the slow erosion of hope under his father's bitter rule. He has heard more tales of Aragorn's deeds in the north, of the fire that seems to go with him. When he learns that this same Aragorn now leads an army in Rohan, his heart stirs. "If there is such a man," he says to Frodo, "and if he comes to Gondor in our hour of need, then perhaps we are not wholly forsaken." Frodo, worn and weary, looks at him. "He bears a fire," he says slowly. "I have seen it. It warms, but it can also burn. Yet I think he will not use it for his own glory." Faramir nods, more to himself than to Frodo. "Then I will be glad to stand beside such a fire," he says quietly. "Better to burn in a just cause than to wither slowly in a steward's hall." He lets Frodo go, as before. Yet when he returns to Minas Tirith, his resolve is different. He will not be his father's passive tool. He will seek out this northern fire and see whether it is worthy of Gondor. The paths of these men, both kindled by Narya in different ways, will soon converge. After the victory at Helm's Deep and the parley with Saruman, Aragorn stands at a crossroads of his own. They are camped upon the fields of Rohan, the sky a deep indigo scattered with stars. The air smells of trampled grass and wood smoke. In his tent, Aragorn sits alone, a map of Gondor spread before him. Narya lies upon the table, its red stone casting a small, steady glow. He has taken to wearing it openly, at least in private. The ring feels almost like a living thing now, its presence a constant warmth in his hand. Gandalf enters without ceremony. "You are brooding," the wizard says. "I am considering," Aragorn replies. "Those who stare too long into a fire may find their sight altered," Gandalf observes. What do you see?" Aragorn's eyes do not leave the map. "I see Minas Tirith besieged," he says. "I see the hosts of Mordor pouring over the Pelennor. I see Denethor consumed by his own despair. I see Rohan riding to the aid of Gondor, but too late, unless we move swiftly." He looks up. "I also see that with this ring, I could do more than merely counsel and lead. I could blaze forth. I could become a banner that no man could ignore. I could bend wavering hearts to my will, not by fear of the enemy, but by the fierce love of the West. I could make men follow me into any fire. Gandalf's face is grave, and do you think that would be wholly good?" he asks. Aragorn's hand closes around Narya. "I do not know," he admits. "That is what terrifies me." Gandalf comes closer. "Listen to me, son of Arathorn," he says. "The enemy's chief weapon is not the ring alone, but despair. The belief that nothing one does can alter the great tide. Narya was made to fight that despair, to kindle hearts so that they do not sink into darkness. It was not made to make one man into a tyrant of hope." He lays his hand over Aragorn's. "Use it to strengthen others, not to command them. Let it be a hearth, not a furnace. If you do that, then perhaps you may walk this path without being consumed." Aragorn looks at him, and for a moment the weight on his shoulders seems lighter. "Thank you," he says. Gandalf smiles faintly. "Besides," he adds, a glint of humor in his eyes, "if you begin to blaze too brightly, I shall have to find a bucket of cold water somewhere. And that would be a poor use of my time when there are so many other fires to tend." Aragorn laughs, the sound easing some of the tension in the tent. Yet the choice remains. It is brought to a head on the paths of the dead. The wind howls through the dark passage. The air is cold, still, heavy with the weight of centuries. Pale shapes move in the shadows, whispering. The dead do not rest easy. Aragorn walks at the head of the small company, Andúril in his hand. The sword's light is pale and cold, like starlight on steel. Narya's warmth is a small, steady pulse against his skin, defiant in this place of chill. The dead gather around them, their eyes like dim lamps. "Who are you?" a voice whispers, "to summon us from our long watch? We owe no allegiance to any who live." Aragorn stops. He can feel the fear of those behind him, Legolas, Gimli, the Grey Company. He can also feel the weight of the oath, the binding of ancient words. The dead are drawn to him, yet they resist. He could force them. With Narya, he could blaze forth, his will a fire that sears through their ghostly reluctance. He could bend them, compel them, make them follow him, whether they will or no. Instead, he takes a different path. He draws Narya from beneath his tunic and slips it upon his finger. The ring's fire flares, casting a red glow that seems to push back the cold. The dead recoil, hissing. "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn," he says, his voice ringing in the dark. "Heir of Isildur and rightful king of Gondor. I do not come to bind you with a new chain, but to release you from an old one. Your oath holds you, not I. Yet I offer you this. Follow me now in this last need of the West, and I will set you free. Refuse, and you will remain here until the world's ending. Your shame unhealed. Narya's fire does not reach out to crush their wills. It burns around him like a beacon, a visible sign of his resolve, of his willingness to spend himself for this cause. The dead waver. In their pale eyes, long dim embers stir. At last, the king of the dead bows his head. "We will follow," he whispers, "for we see that your fire is not for yourself alone. They pass through the darkness together, living and dead, the red and white lights of Narya and Andúril leading them. on the black ships of the corsairs. When Aragorn reveals himself, Narya blazes more openly than ever before. The river is wide, the air thick with the smell of tar and salt. Drums beat. The corsairs shout and jeer, their black sails billowing. On the shore, far away, Minas Tirith burns. Aragorn stands upon the prow of the lead ship, the wind whipping his cloak. The dead swarm over the decks, their ghostly hands dragging down screaming men. The corsairs falter, terror in their eyes. Aragorn raises his hand. Narya flares, a red star against the gray sky. I am Elisar, the Elfstone, and Envinyatar, the Renewer, he cries. I am the flame that will not be quenched. Will you fight for the shadow, or will you turn and stand with the west? The men of Gondor and Lebanon, slaves on the corsair ships, feel the heat of his presence like a wind. Their fear melts. Their anger, their long-buried pride leap up. Gondor, they shout. Gondor and the king. They seize weapons, turn on their masters. The corsair fleet falls into chaos. On the Pelennor, as Theoden falls, and the Witch King is destroyed by Éowyn and Merry, a new fire appears on the river. The black sails come, as in the other tale. The defenders of Minas Tirith see them and despair. Yet when the banners break, they do not reveal only the white tree and the 7 stars. They reveal also a red jewel upon a golden ring, emblazoned upon a field of silver and sable, the sign of Narya, now openly borne by the king. Aragorn leaps from the prow, Anduril in his hand, Narya blazing on his finger. The men of Gondor, weary and blooded, see him and feel a heat rush through them, as if the very stones of their city have kindled. Gondor! Aragorn cries, Gondor and the west, for your homes, for your children, for the light that yet may be. His voice is like a trumpet. His presence is a storm of fire. Men who a moment before could barely lift their swords now charge forward with a roar. The hosts of Mordor, who had seemed an unstoppable tide, falter before this sudden blaze of mortal will. Even Sauron feels it. In Barad-dûr, the eye narrows. What is this? A fire that is not mine, blazing in the very shadow of my gates? He turns more of his thought toward Minas Tirith, seeking to crush this new threat. In doing so, he draws some attention away from Frodo and Sam, now creeping through the wastes of Mordor. For a time, Narya's fire serves as a shield for the ring-bearer, drawing the eye's gaze, yet it is also a beacon that cannot be hidden. In the houses of healing, after the battle, the cost of that blaze becomes clear. The air smells of blood and athelas. Groans echo through the stone halls. Aragorn moves from bed to bed, his hand steady, his voice calm. Narya's fire is banked now, a gentle warmth that seems to seep into the wounded. When he bends over Faramir, burning with fever, the ring's glow brightens. Faramir, son of Denethor, Aragorn says softly, do not go where I cannot call you back. Gondor has need of you. He lays his hand upon Faramir's brow. For a moment, those nearby feel a heat like summer sunlight, a fragrance of green things and clear water. Faramir's breath steadies. His fever breaks. He opens his eyes. Who are you? He whispers. I am Aragorn, the man replies, and I have come to claim that which was lost. Faramir looks at him, and in his gaze there is no resentment, no fear, only a deep, relieved recognition. Then I submit to your command, he says, and to your fire. Later, when Aragorn steps out into the courtyard exhausted, he finds Gandalf waiting. You spend yourself freely, the wizard observes. Aragorn leans against a pillar, closing his eyes briefly. They needed more than my hands, he says. They needed to feel that the world has not forgotten them, that there is a fire which will not abandon them to the dark. Gandalf nods, and yet, he says, there is still a greater fire in the east, against which all our small hearths must stand. The ring-bearer's road is almost at its end. The eye is more watchful than ever. If you blaze too brightly now, Aragorn, you may draw all the shadow's wrath upon yourself and upon this city. Aragorn opens his eyes. Is that not what we desire? He asks quietly. To draw the eye away from Frodo? To give him whatever chance we can? Gandalf studies him. You would make yourself the torch that the enemy cannot ignore, he says. You would burn so that another may slip by unseen. Aragorn smiles, weary but resolute. What else is a king for? He asks. The decision is made at the last debate. When they plan the march to the Black Gate, Aragorn does not argue against the desperate plan to draw Sauron's gaze. He embraces it fully. We will not merely knock upon his door, he says, his eyes burning. We will set ourselves as a blazing brand before his very face. Let him see us. Let him pour his hate upon us. And while he does, a small hobbit will walk in his land, wrapped in our smoke. Omer looks at him, half in admiration, half in fear. You speak as one already willing to die, the king of Rohan says. I am willing, Aragorn replies, but I do not intend to. Not while there is breath in me and fire in my hand. Pippin, listening from a corner, feels a chill and a warmth at once. He remembers a dark night in Moria, a fall into shadow, a wizard's last cry. He wonders how many more fires must go out before this is done. The march to the Black Gate is a journey into a dying world. The sky grows ever more dark and foul. The land is a waste of ash and rock. The air tastes of dust and despair. Men's shoulders sag. Their steps falter. Aragorn rides at their head, Narya on his hand, and Duril at his side. The ring's fire burns steadily, not in wild flares, but in a constant sustaining heat. He speaks to the men, not with grand speeches, but with quiet words, with glances, with a presence that says, I am here, I will not flee, I burn with you, not above you. At night, around the campfires, when fear whispers of the morrow, he walks among them. He listens to their stories, remembers their names. Narya's warmth flows out from him in small, unnoticed ways. A man who had been on the verge of breaking finds the strength to laugh at some old joke, a youth who trembled at the thought of battle dreams instead of his home, and wakes with a steadier heart. Sauron feels their coming like a heat on his face. At the Morannon, when the armies of the West stand before the Black Gate, the eye turns fully upon them. The hosts of Mordor pour forth, orcs, trolls, easterlings, Southrons. The ground shakes, the sky churns. Aragorn rides forward alone to the very shadow of the gate. Narya blazes like a small sun upon his hand. Sauron! He cries, his voice carrying impossibly far. You see me now. I am the fire that you did not kindle, the blaze that you cannot command. You have sought to make all hearts your fuel, all wills your tinder. But here stands one who burns not for you, but against you. Look well, for while you gaze upon me, another walks in your land, bearing a smaller fire that will end you. The eye narrows, its slit of flame tightening. Rage, fast and formless, pours out. The assault that follows is terrible. The armies of Mordor crash upon the thin line of the west. Trolls smash into ranks of men. Orcs swarm like ants. The Nazgul wheel overhead, their shrieks knifing through the air. Aragorn is everywhere at once, it seems. Narya's fire burns at its highest pitch now. He is a beacon in the chaos, his presence a rallying point. Men who would have broken instead close ranks around him. When he lifts his sword, their courage surges. When he cries, "For the West," their voices answer like a roaring furnace. Gandalf watches him with a mix of pride and fear. He has become what he must be, the wizard says softly, a king of fire. Yet even as Aragorn blazes, he feels himself burning away. Every shout, every act of courage he kindles in others seems to take a little of his own strength. Narya feeds his resolve, yes, but it also draws upon him. He is not an endless well. He is a man, mortal, finite. He fights on. In Mordor, Frodo and Sam crawl up the slopes of Mount Doom. The sky is red, the air choking. The ring grows heavier with every step. Frodo's will is almost spent. Sam's love is all that keeps them moving, yet even here, at the heart of the enemy's land, a faint echo of Aragorn's blaze reaches them. At a moment when Frodo's knees buckle and he nearly falls, he feels, like a breath on his face, the memory of a man standing upon a wall, shouting words of courage into the storm. He remembers Aragorn's hand on his shoulder, his promise in the prancing pony, "If by life or death I can save you, I will." Frodo straightens. "I must go on," he whispers. "He is burning for me." Sam, not understanding fully, nods. "Then I will carry you, Mr. Frodo," he says. "If he can burn, I can bear." At the cracks of doom, the tale bends again. Frodo stands at the edge of the fire. The ring is on his finger. The world has narrowed to the circle of gold and the vast, devouring need that flows from it. "I will not do this deed," he says. "The ring is mine." In another tale, Gollum comes, bites off his finger, and falls. Here, something else happens first. Far away, at the Black Gate, Aragorn feels a sudden, wrenching pull. It is as if a great, dark hand has seized the fire in his breast and twisted it. Narya's warmth turns suddenly to searing heat. He gasps. Staggering, Sauron has turned more of his power toward him, seeking to crush this insolent flame. In doing so, he inadvertently sends a shock through the web of power that connects the rings. For an instant, in the Sammath Naur, Frodo feels not only the overwhelming will of the One Ring, but also a distant, painful surge of another fire. A mortal fire, straining to stand against a vast shadow. He sees, in his mind's eye, Aragorn on the battlefield, blood on his face, eyes burning, shouting defiance at the eye. He feels the man's determination, his willingness to be spent utterly for this cause. Something cracks. Not the ring, not yet. But Frodo's absolute surrender to its will is shaken for a heartbeat. By the intrusion of another will, another fire, it is enough. Gollum, who has been cowering, torn between fear and desire, sees Frodo waver. He sees the ring glinting on the hobbit's hand. Desire overwhelms everything. He leaps. The struggle is brief and savage. Teeth flash. Blood spills. Frodo screams as his finger is torn away. Gollum dances, exultant. The ring upon his hand. "We wants it! We has it!" he cries. He slips as before. He falls. The ring plunges into the fire. In that moment, all the fires of the world seem to flare. At the Black Gate, Aragorn feels a shock like a thunderclap. Narya's stone blazes white, then red again. The ground heaves. The towers of Mordor tremble. Sauron's eye stretches wide in sudden terror. Then it blows apart. The ground cracks. The towers fall. The Black Gate collapses. The hosts of Mordor wail and flee, leaderless. The Nazgul burst into flame and are gone. Aragorn stands in the midst of chaos, panting, Narya's fire guttering low. He has poured himself out, and the world has changed. In the days that follow, The west rejoices, the ring is destroyed, Sauron is gone, the shadow is lifted, the white tree blooms. Aragorn is crowned LOTR, king of Gondor and Arnor, amid great glory. The coronation is a blaze of light and color. Banners snap in the wind, trumpets sound. The people shout until their voices are hoarse. Aragorn stands upon the steps of the White Tower, the crown of Elendil upon his brow, Narya upon his hand. He feels the eyes of thousands upon him. He feels their love, their hope, their awe. He feels Narya's fire responding, eager to rise and meet their adoration, to cement it into something unbreakable. He hesitates, then, very deliberately, he slips the ring from his finger. A murmur runs through the crowd as the red light dims. Aragorn holds Narya up. "So that all may see, this ring," he says, his voice carrying, "was given to me in secret long ago, that I might kindle hearts in a dark time. Its fire has burned in many battles. It has warmed the despairing and set courage alight. But now the great shadow is gone, and the West must learn to stand in its own light." He looks out over the sea of faces. A king who rules by a fire not his own is no true king, he says. "I will not bind your hearts with any ring, however fair. I will rule by your consent, by your love, and by the strength that we share. Therefore I will lay this ring aside." He turns. Círdan is there, white-haired and silent, as if he has stepped from another age into this moment. Aragorn descends the steps and comes to him. "Shipwright," he says softly, "I have borne your fire. I have burned with it. I thank you for the gift and for the burden, but now I must give it back." He offers Narya. Círdan takes it, his eyes searching Aragorn's face. "You have used it well," the elf says. "You have burned, but you have not consumed. That is more than many could have done." He closes his hand around the ring. "What will you do with it now?" Aragorn asks. Círdan looks westward. "I will keep it," he says, "until the time comes for all such things to pass from the world. The fire of the Eldar must fade, that the fire of men may grow. It is not for us to linger forever, holding back the dark. That task is yours now, without such aids." He smiles, faintly. "You have shown that you can kindle hearts without this ring, LOTR. That is a greater gift than any that the elven smiths could forge." Aragorn bows his head. In the years that follow, the reunited kingdom flourishes. Under Aragorn's rule, Gondor and Arnor are restored. The roads are rebuilt. The lands of Ithilien bloom under Faramir's care. The Shire is protected. The dwarves delve new halls. The elves depart slowly, their ships slipping westward under starlight. Yet the absence of Narya's fire is felt. There are times, in the deep of winter, when the hearts of men grow heavy. There are plagues and famines and border wars. The old despair, never fully slain, stirs in some corners of the world. Without Narya, Aragorn must work harder to kindle hope. He must rely on his own presence, his own words, his own deeds. He cannot simply reach within and draw forth a ready blaze. He does not regret his choice. Yet there are nights when he walks alone upon the walls of Minas Tirith, the city sleeping beneath him, the white tree pale in the moonlight, when he remembers the warmth of that ring upon his hand. He remembers the way men's eyes lit when he raised it, the way fear melted before its fire. He remembers the terrible, exhilarating sense of being a living beacon, the point upon which the hopes of the world converged. He remembers also the temptation that came with it, the whisper that he could do more, be more, if he would only grasp more tightly. He is glad that he let it go. Arwen beside him, senses his thoughts. "You miss it," she says quietly. "I miss what I could do with it," he admits. "I do not miss what it could have done to me." She takes his hand. "You are a fire, Estelle," she says, "with or without any ring. You burned for others when you walked in the wild as a nameless ranger. You burned for them when you led them to the Black Gate. You burn for them now, in counsel and in judgment." That is what it is to be a king. He looks at her, and in her eyes he sees the reflection of his own small mortal flame. "I am also a man," he says, "and one day even this fire will go out." She smiles sadly. "All fires go out," she says, "even the stars. That is not what matters. What matters is what they light while they burn." Far away, in the west, on the shores of the sea, Círdan stands once more upon a high quay. The sun is setting, the water a sheet of molten gold. A white ship lies ready, its sails furled. On the pier, a small company waits. Frodo, Sam, Bilbo, Gandalf, and others. Their faces are lit by the red and gold of the dying light. Gandalf, now robed in white, comes to stand beside Círdan. "You have kept it," he says, looking at the ring in the shipwright's hand. "For a time," Círdan replies. "But the time of the three is over. The one is gone. The world has changed. It is not for us to keep these fires burning forever." He looks at Gandalf. "Will you take it again for the last voyage?" he asks. Gandalf smiles sadly. "I think not," he says. "I have walked long in this world without it. I have seen another bear its fire and lay it down. My work here is done. Whatever awaits us beyond the sea, it will not be met with the tools of this fading age." Círdan nods. He turns to Frodo. "Ring-bearer," he says gently, "you have carried a burden that no other could. The fire that you bore was dark and devouring, yet you did not let it consume you wholly. The scars of that burden will not heal in this land, but perhaps beyond the sea there is a light that does not burn, only heals." Frodo's eyes fill with tears. "I am so tired," he whispers. "I know," Círdan says. "Come then." The ship waits. He closes his hand around Narya one last time. As the white ship slips away from the shore, the ring's fire dims. On the deck, Gandalf stands at the prow, his staff in his hand. He feels a faint warmth in his pocket. Where once a ring lay, it is only memory. He looks back at Middle-earth, growing small. He thinks of a man standing upon a wall of white stone, his eyes alight with a fire that came from no ring. He thinks of a hobbit on a dark mountain, choosing, in the end, not to choose for himself. He thinks of an elf shipwright who knew when to give a fire and when to let it go out. In Minas Tirith, years later, an old king lies upon a high bed, the white tree blooming outside his window. Aragorn's hair is silver now, his face lined. His eyes, though dimmed, still hold a quiet fire. Arwen sits beside him, her hand in his. The room smells of athelas and candle wax. "I am weary," he says softly. "It is time to sleep." Arwen's eyes are full of unshed tears. "You are the fire of men," she says. "How can you go out and leave us in the dark?" He smiles faintly. "I was never more than a candle," he replies. "The fire of men is in all of you, in your children, in their children. It is in every small act of courage, every kindness, every refusal to bow to despair. I only burned a little brighter for a little while so that others might see." He closes his eyes. "Remember," he whispers, "you do not need a ring to kindle a heart." His hand falls still. Outside, the wind stirs the leaves of the white tree. The city is quiet. In a small house in the lower circles, a child lights a single candle against the night, its flame trembling but unafraid. Far to the west, beyond sight, beyond the bent world, a red stone, long since cooled, lies forgotten on a gray shore where no feet now walk. The sea sighs, the sky is full of stars, and somewhere in the memory of the world, a man stands upon a broken wall, his eyes alight with a fire that was his and not his, as a great eye trembles and shrinks in the ruin of its own devouring flame.